I'm Marissa Franklin. Again, we want to welcome you to today's math virtual gathering. Today we are lucky enough to have Ryan Schreck from EdReady here. He is the program manager for EdReady Montana, and we're here to kind of get ideas and be inspired of how to use EdReady for the remainder of the year. Ryan has a couple ideas depending on our grade levels. To start with our discussion question number one, which is just thinking about what are the gaps or things that you're trying to address with your students right now, and what concepts are your students struggling with the most this year. And when you're thinking about that, maybe those are the things that you know you need to hit before the end of the year in order to prepare them and be ready for next year. So we'll just take 2 minutes. Feel free to type in your answer into the discussion chat box, or if you just want to think about it, that's fine. So we're going to turn this over to Ryan. Please, at any point, ask your question. He's here to present for you. It looks like we have a middle school through high school teacher. We have a resource room that's K-12.
Well, welcome everybody, and thanks for having me. I'm going to share my screen here, and it looks like I heard really briefly there that maybe Crystal has seen the program or maybe used it a little bit before. Yeah, I'm going to start pretty high level here and kind of give you the big picture, and then drill down on a couple of specifics and get to maybe how this could impact you or your students, and then how you can get started if you're interested in finding out a little bit more, and talk to you about some of the things that we've learned during the time that we've been doing EdReady that could maybe help inform you or your classroom or your programs at your school. So my name is Ryan Schreck, and I've been with the Montana Digital Academy since about December of 2010. And my initial job there was to help launch our credit recovery program. And if you imagine launching a credit recovery program where you're working with all the students that have already failed classes, we were serving a few thousand students around Montana. It'd be like having a gym full of students that have previously failed classes before, and creating a program that would help them recover credit. And so that was one of my first challenges at this job. Previous to that, I was a distance learning director at a 2-year college for 8 years, and I taught at high schools and middle schools in Montana and Oregon before that. And that's been my past, my history. But when the credit recovery program was added, we added that in February of 2011. We knew that we were still missing something in the mix for Montana educators. We have our original credit classes that you may be familiar with the Montana Digital Academy, that we hire teachers from all over the state to teach students from all over the state, and we help fill in gaps for students and for schools. And with credit recovery, again, providing a credit recovery option that could be accessed by any school, by any student in the state for all the core classes, was an undertaking that we felt helped also fill in a great need for Montana educators, and it has for the last 8 years plus. But then when the EdReady program came out, and we knew that that was happening from the national level, and I'll talk to you about that in a second here, the EdReady pilot, we were one of 5 states to pilot in 2013, and we were working primarily with students transitioning from high school to college. But we also had some pilots going on at the algebra level and at the 8th grade level to bridge over into high school. So we initially advertised it as 7th grade through college. Anybody in Montana could access it. Well, based upon those early results, the program was very successful in helping students not only prepare and save money for college, but also pass their classes after that. And those early pilots led us to receive some funding from the Dennis and Phyllis Washington Foundation in Montana, and we received a 3-year gift to roll it out and field test it for our state. And based upon those results, 3 years in, we got 5 more years starting in February 2017. So we're just starting the 2nd year of our 2nd gift, and essentially bringing this program free of charge to everybody in Montana. And we've expanded since that early time from 7th grade through higher ed to include everything from upper elementary school through adult basic education. We're in every adult basic education center in the state, and it's just grown. So the impact that we've had around the state to help provide a tool to get it to educators is our main goal here. We're not trying to replace anything. We're trying to fill in gaps, not only literally with the student gaps in math learning, but also in you being able to bring a tool into your classroom to help you address those gaps with your students in your program. And then we're here to provide professional development, technical support, and everything else in between to help you utilize that tool as effectively as you can at all these different levels for all these different use cases. We're in about 460 different schools right now. I don't even know what we're at as far as overall enrollment since the beginning. I think we're somewhere around 92,000 enrollments in the last about 4 to 5 years. And we're also training other states, and other people are looking to Montana to figure out how are we doing this, how are we functioning and getting this out to people. So we're also an ambassador for other people around the nation trying to learn what we're doing. And we blaze the trail with EdReady. If you're using it, you are one of those trailblazers. Your school, people are looking to Montana to see how we're using this. And so what we did is we found this tool as an open educational resource that we've, in a sense, curated and helped Montana form it into something that can help address all of these different levels and needs of math. So here's just a quick picture of all the different places and schools. We could zoom in on it and find yours probably on this list, pulling from a live database that we update, and all the different types of schools have a different icon there. But essentially, I think that number is even small now, 87,000. I know we're over 90,000 now. And so, but what we want to emphasize is we're here to help. This isn't something that we're looking to sell. We're obviously not selling it. We're trying to curate something, a tool that's going to help fill in those gaps for you. It's free. It's a math readiness tool. It's customizable to the scope of study that you want to narrow it to for your students to provide a mastery-based learning path. It's supplemental, and it's blended in nature. So the whole idea of blended learning, which I'm headed off to teach a class here in about 20 minutes on it, but the blended learning model is just that. It's you do something online that informs your instruction and the directions that you have the students sit at a computer with a plan on, it becomes a circle. And so we want to provide the tool on the one end to provide you the blended learning opportunity to have the students be able to sit there with a basic plan and learn in the direction that you want them to learn, to fill in those gaps, but to give you a tool that can help inform your instruction on where your students' gaps and weaknesses are and what they may not be grasping, where they are a little bit ahead, a little bit behind, or everywhere in between. So that's really what we're here trying to do, and I'm going to just talk to you a little bit about the rest of this goes into a full orientation on EdReady. We're not going to go there. You can sign up for one of those, you can do that, but I wanted to start with a little bit of background. And so I think I'll skip right now into some of the results that we're seeing just most recently with the program. So let me grab my share button here and bring up a slide. So this is something that we're just finding out here in the last few, there it is. In the last few months, we're seeing, you know, some of the programs are starting to mature, and we're starting to get data. Before, everybody asked us for data to prove that it worked, and we said, well, we're making it. The people that are using it are making it right now. They're making a difference with their students, and so these are still pretty small scale, but we know that both of these programs are going to grow substantially this summer. So let me just talk to you about two at the University of Montana and MSU. And so at the University of Montana, they're doing what they're calling a soft placement. They're using EdReady as a skills inventory, if you will. Rather than a one and done placement test, they're having students go into an EdReady goal and work to completion over a certain scope of study, a narrowed scope of study that's specifically geared toward the two classes that they're testing into. That they would normally just be taking a placement test and they'd have to get a certain level. And if they were below that level, they'd be placed into developmental level math. Instead of doing that, they're saying, if you do all of these things, we're going to put you right into Math 105 or Math 115 at the University of Montana. So they're essentially saying, it's up to you. You're capable of being in these classes. Here's a program that will help you self-study and move past the basic math levels into Math 105 and 115. Based upon our past history, they've been doing this summer program that they were putting a post-test at the end of that. They were letting them retake the placement test. they've just done away with the retake of the placement test, essentially, because they were getting 85-ish% of those students passing the class anyway, which was better than the norm, the other students that tested into the class without doing EdReady. So what they figure is making a difference for those students is they were actually practicing the math and learning the math and then getting into the program. Novel idea as educators. I know they did more math, and so they were more successful in math. Good plan.
Ryan, one quick question for you on UM
Yeah.
side. If you have a student who's going to be going to UM next year, do they sign up? Like, I think that they get it in their acceptance letter or something, the opportunity to sign up for the summer practice. Is that the best way to get students enrolled in that?
Yeah, if they're going into a 105 and 115, they're going to be I was just looking at some of the draft, and we're meeting next week with the Office for Student Success and the EdReady coordinator, and I believe somebody in the registrar's office as well. And they're drafting the language. It's going to be, I think it's like task number 5 under some sort of, we're looking at an orientation packet of some sort. Okay. Yes. They're going to be given that opportunity to do the program. Yes.
Awesome. So maybe something
exactly
to,
which document, but yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, the pilot that they did last summer, though, that was successful is they had 39 students, and this was all by word of mouth, by the way. So these 39 students participated in the pilot and increased. They did their EdReady study path, and they got to 90%. And 19 of them enrolled in that math class for fall 2017. And 89% of them earned the grades sufficient to meet that next level of math. And if you know anything about developmental math, they would have been in developmental math, and developmental math pass rates at all the universities, not just in Montana, are generally a coin flip. It's around 45 to 55%, depending on who you ask and which school and what year and which way the wind's blowing. And so 95% of those students, though, of those math enrollees, they were retained for the following spring. The dropout rate of those students is usually substantially higher. It's usually that first year. What we see in Montana is about 8 to 10% of those students actually graduate within 6 years. So a few more drop out every year, and it becomes a black hole, essentially, to be placed into developmental level math. And so if we can get students into their 100 level math class, it's generally one of the indicators of whether that student's going to succeed and move on in college. So what they found, though, was 87% of those 39 pilot students were retained as well. So even though they hadn't taken math, they were still encouraged because they were not being placed into developmental level math, we feel was part of the reason. And those students saved $33,000 in tuition and fees. Pretty good start. So they're just looking to do this for all Math 105 and 115 students and increase the opportunity. It's going to be offered to somewhere between 400 and 700 students as an option this year. I don't know what the actual in will be and what they'll pull in and who will take advantage of it, but we should see something similar to what we saw. Now, MSU's been doing this for a couple of summers now, and their program is a little bit more mature. This is the number that they had last year. What they do is they do the NPLEX test, and I was an MSU undergrad, so I sat and took this NPLEX test. And what it does is it's their math placement exam. That's what NPLEX stands for. What they did is if they tested into developmental level math or tested below where they wanted to be, they were offered the opportunity to go take EdReady, a goal that they have put out for them, and do 20 hours of study and get a 90%. So finish it to 90% and spend 20 hours of study time within the system. If they did that, they qualified then to retake the NPLEX test in a retake opportunity that was then proctored in the day or two before the semester started. And advisors on hand will help you enroll. If you pass it, we'll know right away, and then we'll get you into that next class. All 81 students that took advantage of this increased their math placement score. So nobody that did more math tested lower on the NPLEX than when they didn't do the math. And then 59 of those 81, 73% of them increased by a level, at least one level of math. And so that essentially is testing out of a class, whether that class is developmental and level, or if it's like an algebra, college algebra, but you test it into calculus. Those are all levels. So they start off at pre-algebra, basic algebra, intermediate algebra, college algebra, calculus, I think is the way that most of the MSU tracks go, but they also have the non-calculus track as well, much like what we're looking at the University of Montana So there's the statistics track and the contemporary math track as well. Anyway, 35 of those students moved from developmental level math all the way to college math. So they increased by at least one level and went from developmental math, a 0 number that doesn't count for college credit, up to a 100 level. The tuition and fee savings for the students that took part, all 81 of these students, it was $1,900 per student is what it averaged out to, with an overall estimate of around $158,000 in tuition and fees saved. And their drop, withdraw, and fail rate, that's what DWF stands for in college lingo, was 16%. Well, that's 1/2 of the overall math class rate of the DWF rate for math classes at MSU. So normally 32% DWF rate, 16% with these students. They liked these results.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, these are all so encouraging, and for our teachers here, who it seems like there's a lot of them that are in those K-12 schools, what recommendation would you give them to, about this program for their seniors or their graduating school students who are going to either UM or MSU? What would you have those senior year teachers do right now?
So with the encouraging results here, we have these we have what we call goals, EdReady goals, which essentially give them a scope of study to work toward. And it goes all the way from 5th grade readiness is where we started. And we've aligned that with our advisory group to the math standards and what EdReady will teach to each level from 5th grade. Day 1 of 5th grade is 5th grade readiness, all the way up through college readiness, which for the most part, if you go to level 5 of the MPLEX, about all you're missing from that is some of the actual calculus work that would need to go into a calculus study. And I could even help provide the videos that would help bridge that gap. But it essentially gets you ready for survey level calculus, maybe not college, maybe not engineering calculus, but it goes up through trigonometry and functions at the top end. So that's where it would get them prepared skill-wise, of course, being facilitated by a teacher.
Awesome. So I guess for our high school teachers right now, I would definitely recommend that you, start using EdReady so that your students, by the time they have this opportunity, are ready to use it and are comfortable using EdReady and are more likely to engage in these pilot programs at UM and MSU, and then that your students do that, right? If you have any students going to UM or MSU next year, make sure that they do take this opportunity to save some money.
The Corvallis program is also a huge, has been a huge example for us over the years. They were dealing with their students. This was the middle school to high school transition. They had students that were coming in unprepared, and I'm sure this is not anything new to this audience, but students that were not ready for algebra from middle school or transferring in or whatever it might be. And so about 10% of their students in every class were impacted like this. So what they created was a Back on Track program, which utilizes EdReady and a team of 2 teachers, and they work with their pre-algebra students to teach them, and they use a rotation model in blended learning terms, where they have a teacher-led instruction for about the first 15 minutes of their block schedule. Then they split up and they teach a concept to half the students. The other half works on their own personalized learning path on EdReady. They keep a journal. They track them through the program. They're spread out a little bit, but then they rotate and they work teacher-led with the other half and do EdReady with the other half. Then they pull them together and give them their homework for the night. And they work all the way through pre-algebra. They do 2 blocks. They do 2 blocks out of the 8. So they'll do a block of math every day. And the way that what they end up getting out of that is those students become algebra students by the Christmas break.
Oh, wow.
And then they work on algebra in an accelerated pathway for the rest of that school year, and they're back on track as geometry students their sophomore year. Great program. It's drawn up on our website here. We'd be happy to talk a little bit more about that if anybody's interested. But what we're seeing is EdReady treating that math skill gap issue that we see, that's finally what students have to pay for when they get to college. We're seeing Montana educators say, no, we can start working on this at the high school level, and then the high school spreading down into the middle school level, the middle school spreading down into the upper elementary level, and we have all sorts of programs now that are using the program starting all the way back in upper elementary, 5th, 6th, 7th grade, up through the end of high school, and getting them ready to take ACT or do better with ACT type skills, and not take the time off, and be successful at taking their ACT and getting the score that more accurately reflects what they know in math and have learned over time. So all of the above. And so what I would say is two things that I would leave you with. One is we also have an ambassador program that will help provide professional development. And we find that half of the professional development is just working with the technology and stuff. The other half is giving you the tools to structure your classroom, teaching and learning environment, using our classroom resources here, things like taking notes on the topics and showing your work, and being able to allow teachers to accurately know and track what's going on with their students and be able to intervene and help when they're struggling, but identify the gaps for individual students along the way to do that. So that's what we've been working over and over again with educators like yourselves to help do, and that's what we're here to help with. We're very responsive. We're going to be there to help. If you reach out to us, I promise that we will be back in touch with you within 24 hours, and we will get you the help that you need to use our program and learn how it could impact your class. So following up between now and the end of the year would be a great way to pilot it and figure out how it could help you figure out what students' gaps are that they need to fill in between now and the end of the year, or now in your summer program if you're going to run one. And also bridging over into next year, it would give you a good opportunity to prepare and maybe get this worked around procedure-wise for your students so that you could integrate it into your program and utilize it next fall. And we're here to help anywhere along that pathway. We have 4 regional ambassadors that can go out to your school or in your region or in your area and provide professional development, and a capable team here to help you with the technical support or day-to-day support aspect. You reach out, we're here to help. It's not, we're not selling you anything, but we're going to help you use a tool that's going to help hopefully make a difference for you and your students. So that's me, that's my spiel, and I'd be happy to answer some questions before I have to take off. Maybe I can stay for 5 more minutes while I do any Q&A that you might have. One of the big things that I've learned is they will listen to us at the national level when they're reworking the program. So things like expanding the question database and types of questions and numbers of questions and how the program works and how it works reporting-wise and tracking-wise, they've been listening to you all as Montana educators and our user base to go back and inform and make the program even better month after month, year after year. So we just look forward to working with more of you and helping you use the program as effectively as we can in your classroom. So I guess I do see the one thing where finding time for the program, of course, that's always a challenge, and that's something that, you know, we hope that through having an ambassador to lean on and our tech support, they're available when, you know, same day, within hours usually, to help with any problems that you might have. That's really what we hope to do. As soon as you're ready for us, we want to be there to help you use the system, and we'll follow up with our ambassadors on an as-needed basis to, you know, help smooth over the edges if you're running into difficulties with the program.
Oh, so it looks like, Ryan, we have 2 questions in the chat box. One is from Brandy. She says her son used this last summer to catch up in the 8th grade. Can you retake this placement test?
Yeah, it's not really a placement test as much as that upfront initial diagnostic puts the rest of the learning path into perspective for you. So it tests you on any gaps that you have and then lays out a study path with learning materials and then self-test after that. So if you have somebody that you want us to reset, if you want your sons to have another opportunity to go back and work through it, we're happy to do that, or happy to guide you to the next level of assessment. So yeah, if you reach out and contact us, if you go to our website,
I'll pull it up here,
EdReadyMontana.org, and there's a help button right in the middle here. I'm gonna click on the help button and fill that out our staff answers that and mans that during the day, we'll have somebody back to you and we'll give you some options for what you might want to do, either through the school, or if he's as an individual user, we could help you there too. We'd have to look into some specifics. You might get the questions back from Jason, our registrar, tomorrow if you fill it out.
From Crystal, I have a student who uses the program outside of class. However, with no time spent in class, interest is lost. Can I see how much time a student spends on the program?
Yeah, that's what we do to set up your school. If they're in there as an individual user and not sponsored by the school, you can look over the shoulder and see some. But if you sign up through the school, what we help you do, that gives you administrative access, and you can go in and look at the tracking. You can see down to every test that they take and every question that they're delivered and their question that they answer, how they answered it, and the correct answer. So you can really drill down on the concepts that they're struggling with. You can see logs of what they do when they're in the system and what they get right and wrong on all the tests. So that really is the advantage of having us help a school get set up with it for your classroom, and we're happy to facilitate that. We'll do an individual classroom, or we'll come in and help anybody in the school that wants to use it if it expands out from you as the initial user.
The part of students signing up for the summer after senior year different than what I can sign students up for now during the year? So for the college, that goal is they can only be assigned by the college. It can't be assigned by their high school teacher right now.
We can get you access to the same ones that they're using at the university if you're interested in that. It's all dependent upon how you want to utilize it at your school. If you want it to be a supplement to your high school level classes, great. If you want it to be a prep for an ACT or a standardized test, we have goals that are customized to that level. If you go to our website.
Yeah, if you go to educators and then goals and menus and details on that right-hand column, you can go ahead and pick like if you have a secondary goal. But that would be awesome to have them. They can continue that program throughout the summer, right? So the student can continue the program throughout the summer. Would be awesome to get them that head start on the same one that they'll be doing for the college would be great.
Yep, and just having an educator in the mix, though, to guide them toward doing the learning resources as well as the self-testing is very critical. It's the second most important thing besides having the technology is having a strategy that has them utilizing the system how it's intended to, and we see that combination working really well.
Up for that same goal as like the MSU or the Montana State goal, can that student, would they be able to stay in that goal and like start it now, or do they need to wait and sign up with the university to start that goal? Do you know yet? Or I guess you're saying you're talking to the university next week.
Probably once the university opens their opportunity up, contacting one of the advisors there or whoever the point person is. There's going to be a point person at both the University of Montana and at MSU. And I think you're showing the websites maybe. There's a point person, Lauren Fern, at the University of Montana, and then they're changing over. I believe it's going to be Kristen Bryant instead of Brett Runyon at MSU. But they're going to have a website that you can go and sign up for if they've been declared that they're going there and they need help in math and they want to sign up for the EdReady program. They will facilitate that sign up there locally. And then they're doing the same thing that you're asking about. They're creating a program then that they can go in and track that student, whether they've spent the hours studying and getting the score that they need to then qualify for a retake of the NPLEX if they've already taken it. So yeah, there's just go to the college that they want to go to if they want to be a part of the exact one that's going to prepare them for the path that they're most interested in at that college.
Right. So there's not like the teacher does not need to like turn over their EdReady work. Like they'll have to start the program through with the universities.
If they come in and they need to take that to prove that they are able to go to that path, but it's a substitute for taking the placement exam at the University of Montana, and for the other, it's for the student. They're still going to have to take the NPLEX. They're not going to get around not taking the NPLEX at MSU. This will just help them be prepared to score well the first time they take the NPLEX. So they would probably not even be in that group that would go in and have to study the extra time. They would essentially get the score, hopefully, that they want the first time through, or a higher score than they would have otherwise on that NPLEX
I see.
at MSU.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here, and
Thanks for having me.
yeah.
If anybody comes up with a question that
Yep.
you are
Here's
struggling
email.
through, let me know, Marissa, and I'll answer for the good of everybody
Yep.
when we have time to debrief afterwards. So
Of
thanks,
course.
Autumn.
Thank you, Ryan. So we've got about 5 minutes left, and I just wanted to quickly show you a couple more things that are popping up on our chat over here. One thing is in the EdReady site. So if we go to educators and then you have those goals, so what he was saying, like they'll have to go ahead and take the NPLEX anyway, but one idea that you could start working on, and I know I'm thinking about like when I taught seniors, and I taught seniors every year, in about a month or in about a couple weeks, that senioritis is really kicking in, and the thing that got them going was making sure that they did well in their college entrance exam. So I would definitely sign them up for this college readiness track, which kind of takes them through everything. And I'm assuming that program is very similar to this goal set, this college readiness, the math support J, or this college readiness support, and getting students on that and reviewing, and that way when they take that NPLEX the first time, they're already good. They don't have to do the summer program with EdReady, but if they don't do so well, then they do now have that opportunity to use EdReady as a supplement over the summer. So definitely kind of that college readiness, that Math J support would definitely prepare them for that NPLEX exam. And then one other thing that he quickly showed that was really helpful is also under educators, is those classroom resources. This is what I was asking. I was like, okay, so how do you actually use it? And I know Corvallis does a little bit like Teach Together. They differentiate half the classes on the computers, the other half is with the teacher, and then they rotate, and then they come back together as a classroom, and using that that model. But one other thing I really heard that Ryan said was making sure students have a notebook, and I know I always tried to do this, but I didn't follow through, but making sure students have a notebook, that they're EdReady notebook, that they're taking notes, that they are doing problems in, right? Because otherwise they'll just sit there and kind of tune out, right? So to make sure that they're really working on it. And then they also have collected some of these best practices from different teachers that use EdReady. So things like there's like a topic worksheet that you can have in front of everything, and so that way that it's a kind of a template of what students are working on, right? Question number, response, notes, that you can actually just print these out and they're ready to go, so that you can have students working on that. They have those like weekly goal trackers and things. And then, oh, I like this, the ticket to test. So once a student thinks that they're ready to go ahead and test or take the test at the end of this unit, they can go ahead, and this would be something you can go ahead, I've completed this unit, these are the concepts so far. So these are already ready if you would like. And that way you can just print these out and start using this next week with your students, and definitely your high school students who are kind of starting, those senioritis is starting to kick in, and making sure that they're ready for college next year. So I wanted to end with us going back to our virtual math community Google Doc here. Thank you all for being here. Again, Ryan, he responds to my emails within 30 seconds. So if you have any questions, make sure that you ask him, because he wants to make sure that this is working for you. So another thing we were just brainstorming here is question 2 is like, how do we see using EdReady in your school for the remainder of the year? And then what are your plans for using EdReady maybe in September? Thinking about, okay, well, next year. So go ahead and maybe take another 30 seconds or so. We're going to wrap up in the next minute thinking about, how do you see using EdReady in your school for the remainder of the year? So it is 4:30, so we are going to wrap up. But thank you for the person who shared that idea of using extra credit, and using that particularly towards the end of the year, using it as an extra credit kind of usage, and you can track what the students have worked on. And then maybe next year implementing it at the beginning of the year and having it actually part of your classroom would be kind of cool to see. And then using it the last 2 weeks of school for students to prepare for the NPLEX for those senior classes. And definitely, yeah, with that Algebra 2 class, using kind of that catch-up thing and having them, move ahead and make sure that they're completely ready. I saw that we have a 5th grade math teacher who joined in too. This would be a great way for that transition to middle school, depending, I'm not sure where you're teaching, but thinking about how can we use this to make sure that those gaps are filled before they enter into that middle school year. Oh, nice. Yeah, using it as an advanced program too. That's a great idea, and definitely something that that we can definitely use for the remainder of the year and kind of get used to. And it's always kind of nice to pilot things with students who, your high flyer students, and kind of pilot it and see how it goes, and then see how you can then make that work for the remainder of your grade and for the remainder of your students. I really like that idea. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to email me. I'm Marissa Franklin, and I'm the Math Instructional Coordinator here at OPI. Also, feel free to email Ryan with any questions that you have, and I really hope that you end up using EdReady. Or if anything, a couple students go into MSU or next year, and you can make sure that they are using EdReady to prepare for their NCLEX. And also, if they don't do so well in their NCLEX exam, make sure that they use the EdReady program over the summer so that they don't have to pay an extra $1,000 in math credits and for units that won't go towards their college degree.